Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The discussion about the rules of interaction between men and women continuously resurfaces. Take, for example, the Me Too movement, in which many women and men came to share their stories about being sexually assaulted and harassed. The pervasiveness of sexual assault and harassment, even in the workplace, led corporations to introduce even more policies that regulate behavior between men and women. After the hearing of Brett Kavanaugh to determine his eligibility to serve as a Supreme Court justice, many of his interactions with women were highlighted and scrutinized. Secondly, his confirmation as the Supreme Court nomination let many people down, after feeling that the rampant rates of sexual assault and harassment were just not a priority to be dealt with. The Muslim community is not immune to the problem and has witnessed its fair share of sexual assault and abuse. It is important that as Muslims we are clear of the rules that guide interaction between men and women, as sent to us by the Creator of humans to achieve His pleasure first and foremost, and to present as an alternative to the wider society around us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Qalam, Ayah 52, "But it is not except a reminder to the worlds." It is important to note that failing to adhere to Islam's standards on mixing, or its dress code as another example, does not mean that one should expect to be or deserves to be harassed by any means. Nor does it mean that the person quote-unquote asked for it. Regardless what circumstances harassment takes place under, it is wrong, and the person who committed it is at fault. However, identifying these rulings as a part of a broader set of rules that can create an environment that helps prevent them from occurring in the first place. With respect to gender interaction, Islam neither completely removes interaction between men and women, nor leaves interaction completely unrestricted. The general rule is that mixing between males and females is prohibited except in cases stipulated by Islam as evidenced by numerous ahadith. Some of these examples are in medicine, as evidenced by the fact that the Sahabiyat used to treat their Sahaba with the consent of the Prophet ﷺ. In da'wah and education, men and women are permitted to mix for the purpose of education and learning about Islam, as evidenced by the fact that Aisha radiallahu anha used to teach both men and women. In Hajj, through the consent of the Prophet ﷺ. And in workplace, the Prophet ﷺ traded with women and allowed Zubayr ibn Awam's wife to work. These are just some examples, which are by no means exhaustive. But the point is that the Sharia must be the arbitrator in whether mixing can occur. And based on Islamic law, men and women may meet should there be an Islamically approved need for this meeting, an Islam-approved meeting for it. However, once that particular need is fulfilled, the meeting must end. Even in cases where men and women are allowed to mix, there are still rules and regulations which exist and apply to everyone irrespective of how much piety they may think they have. Some examples of these rules which define how one conducts themselves when mixing are lowering the gaze. Tell the men to lower their gaze from looking at forbidden things and protect their private parts. It is more decent for them. Surely Allah is all aware of what they do. And tell the believing women that they must lower their gazes and guard their private parts and must not expose their adornment. Prohibition of being secluded with the opposite gender. Khulwa. No man is alone with a woman, but shaitan is the third. These are just some examples of rules that guide the interaction between men and women. The Islamic guidelines and rulings prohibit casual socialization for its own sake, but allow for professional and purposeful interactions that are also subject to specific rules. These rules take into account the nature of human beings and are preventative in nature. As always, Islam provides the balance, organizing man and woman interaction in the right way for the benefit of the society and restricting it where it will lead to harm for both the individual and the society.